Hi, my name is Vincent Faney. I am the director, producer, and host of the show Insanity Unplugged, in search of game changers. The show premiered, was featured on CTV for Lane County, Oregon, prior to the pandemic, for a couple of years prior to the pandemic. Had a great time interviewing all sorts of wonderful game changers, people who are in the fields of politics, of athletics, of music, strength athletes. I like talking to people. I like talking to people, but particularly people who are innovators, mavericks, game changers. Anyways, today I'm promoting a book, a little story called Blacklisted. And with Blacklisted, as with all my books, the proceeds will either go towards helping to procure housing, affordable housing, for people who would otherwise not have affordable housing, and also to generate money for organizations like Food for Lane County, Catholic Services, the Alzheimer's Association, Women's Space, and other just innumerable charities, organizations and people who are doing good work. And all organizations need money, they need supplies, they need volunteers, and quite frankly, there's not enough money to go around. So a couple friends and I were figuring, why not provide books and products for those people who don't have enough money just to simply take out of their pocket and give someone else, but seem to have enough money at least for a t-shirt or a book or a CD or DVD. And that way they know they could get something, and they know that something will be given to some of these organizations. So I wish I could do more. It's all I can do, but it's all I have. So enjoy. And again, the book I'm listing today is Blacklisted. And this is a small story because not everybody wants to read a big book. I wrote a book called A Postal Story, and that book eventually inspired extreme friendship. In fact, all my books actually inspired extreme friendship, because ultimately that's what we all would do best, becoming extreme friends, surrounding ourselves with extreme friends. Hopefully all your family members are extreme friends. But this short little story is this tale of woe when I worked for the United States Postal Service and had to get involved in an ugly lawsuit, forced into it, after much dragging my feet, not wanting to sue, along with a couple of my coworkers. So quite a few of my coworkers died prematurely, unnecessarily, from respiratory infections because they were not allowed their legal right. It was their legal right, but they were not allowed to wear the doctor-prescribed respirators. A lot of government malfeasance. And not the government. It was actually initially a couple people who worked in the agency, the couple supervisors and the plant manager, who weren't even competent enough to run a mailbox, etc. Okay? But because they were hired and worked for the post office and they were in management, all of a sudden the Justice Department is protecting them, the government, the full weight of the government is protecting them, the FBI is doing investigations for them. All these things are set in motion because you had two or a couple of yahoos, dysfunctional sociopathic yahoos, who set all this in motion. So anyways, but it wasn't just them. In a weird way, I blame my local union. Not every union officer, you know. It's not like I'm saying that every union officer or union steward were worthless or incompetent or whatever. You had a couple union stewards who are quite competent, but they're not the officers. They just talk to the officers. They could only make suggestions to the officers. And the officer could say, that's not what I believe, that's not my opinion, or whatever. So I blame the union officers that were like the president, the vice president, the treasurer, the secretary, those people, the people who are the decision makers that are local. Because not only did they did two things. I think, incited this whole thing to happen, although I don't think they thought it would go the way it did. I think initially they just thought they could use it as a stick to poke the postal management bear and make them uncomfortable. And I think it just took on a life of its own. And before they realized how it was getting out of control, I think there was they basically there was willful negligence because they wanted this to drag on to keep management uncomfortable. Because these people, these officers in management in the post in the union, had once tried to get into management and they basically didn't. They got thrown out, or they didn't play well, or things didn't work out. So they became union officers, mainly, not entirely, but mainly as an axe to grind, to use it as a way to torment their adversaries in management. It wasn't without, some feelings of like, hey, solidarity, because human beings can have conflicting thoughts all the time. They can have conflicting values and thoughts, and some of those thoughts will dominate sometimes over these other thoughts and vice versa. And evidently some of my union officers tended to have vengeful thoughts of domination and so forth. It would dominate. But this book about being blacklisted meant that once I filed a lawsuit, I became persona non grata to potential employers. I was even warned of this. They, on one hand, some of my union officers said, "Boy, I hope to God, I really hope it doesn't happen, because that would have been a terrible thing if you were forced to sue." But another part of me really wishes, that you would have to sue, and if you sued, then all this would come to light, and we would finally be able to get out in the public and talk about all this stuff, the injustices, the sexual harassment, and this and that. And boy, wouldn't that change everything? Congress would get involved, and you would be a hero and all this stuff. And my God, it'd be really something. That'd be a really courageous thing to do. But at the same time, there'd be a price to pay, because nobody would want to hire you if you were ever forced out of this job. You wouldn't be able to work because nobody wants to hire somebody who sues. I understood all that, and that's like saying, yeah, well, that's one of many reasons why I don't want to litigate. I think things could be resolved without going that far, and should be resolved without going that far. Unfortunately, it takes management wanting to do it, takes the union trying to encourage that, but that wasn't happening on either side. So eventually I was forced to litigate, and eventually, just like the union officer told me, well, there's going to be, nobody's going to want to hire you now. And that proved to be true. Now, here's the thing. Personally, I got to speak about it from through my personal lenses. If I had to go through all this, if my coworkers and friends had stood up and just spoke a simple truth, just banded together, went down to Congressman's office, had a few reporters say, "We are standing by Vince and this is wrong," and so forth and so on. If that failed, and I was still forced to sue and I was forced out of work, for me that would have been, hey, that's life. We did our best. And I could, as tough as it would be, I could manage. It would be more manageable. I'm not one of those people. I've done with adversity before. I guess what was really unmanning to me was to have all that and no support. No one speaking up. And to this day, a lot of these people are freaked out and they continue not speaking up, partly because I think some of them are afraid that they would be shown as maybe perhaps having petty reasons for not wanting to stand up, or be shown that they were, and nobody wants to have to be forced to be out in the public and have the world look at them and say, "Oh my God, you are less than a stand-up person. You are a cowardly, scurrilous dog. No ethics. Where's your loyalty?" I mean, I can understand why people don't want to step forward now, but what's worse still is a lot of people, even though if you say, "Look, we'll spare you with that, let's just move on in life and operate like extreme friends and not worry about this. Just let's operate differently from here on." And a lot of people won't do that. So anyways, when I talk about being blacklisted, I don't mean just from employment. Certain segments of the management were trying to do the best to keep me from contacting other segments of management, like the national medical director. They were trying to keep everything like they were like terrorists with different cells, separate from each other, And also my union. I called my union and I was finding out a lot of information that my own union officers didn't want me to know, that my own national didn't want me to know. I had my phone tapped. We had our phones tapped. And then, of course, besides phones being tapped, there was blocked. My phone calls, My national union went to my service provider, my phone provider, and which at the time, that's where you went through the internet, was through your phone line. So they didn't block me from putting out emails. They didn't block me from making phone calls. They blocked me from their offices and locales, various locales around the nation, from receiving my phone call. They worked it to where all the locals' phones were blocked. If I called, my call wasn't accepted. If I emailed, my email was blocked or sent back. Boom. That was pretty hard to take. Your own union, and a lot of things going on with this book. The investigations that went on, the surveillance and everything. Anyway, it's a short story. Some people liked it because they found it to be, people like to read heinous, objectionable things. There's a darkness to it. It's horrific, and some people like to be. It's just like getting up on a roller coaster. They like to be scared. They like to be disgusted. They like to be horrified, and that book will certainly do the trick. That story, and the money's for a good cause. So, just putting it out there. Thanks so much, you guys. See you next time.